So this is part 4 of a 4-part series on right-hand fingering. And we've talked about a number of different things over the last many videos. In the first video, we talked about practicing technique and how practicing technique can build up good habits in your right hand and show you what great fingerings are for basic passages, and also to make you versatile so that you can play through lots of different awkward fingerings without hesitation, for example. And then in the second video, we looked at some specific situations and we just talked about why we might choose one fingering over the other, for example. In the third video, we talked about rest stroke and free stroke and some ideas as to why we might approach a piece of music with one or the other. And in this video, I just want to talk about how to get more confident with your choice of fingerings and just kind of about the journey of coming from a beginner player into a player who is more in the know about right-hand fingerings. So maybe the best thing I can start with is to say this, is that in order to become confident with right-hand fingering choices, you have to have gone over enough material that you feel like you would know what certain players would do. So taking lessons from a good teacher is key to this, of course, because then you can refer to them and you can say like, oh, my teacher did this in this situation and did this in this other situation. But you can also do that by going through multiple books. So when I talk about, I've become more confident over the years with my right-hand fingering, although it's still something I need to explore constantly, and it's still something I really want to think about more and more. But nevertheless, I've become more confident mainly through teaching, because when you teach, you go through a lot of beginner materials. So for example, if you go through like this book, and I'm going to list a whole bunch of books under the video that you can take a look at, or on the website that you can take a look at. But like, for example, if you go through this entire book by Shearer, he has a lot of right-hand fingerings in this book. And if you're an advanced player, you might feel like going through a beginner method book, an absolute beginner method book, isn't worth your time. But the truth is that it kind of is worth your time, because it will make you think about why certain things are fingered in certain ways. It'll also allow you to think about it without any complicated textures. So without a complicated piece that you're just like trying to focus desperately on the left hand. Maybe you have to focus just more on the right hand, engage with the fingering more often. So going through beginner materials, such as this book, the method book by Shearer, has lots of right-hand fingerings in it, so that could be a good choice. This method book from Hal Leonard is also a great choice. This is available, everywhere. Lots of right-hand fingerings in there, which you can learn from. And you might disagree with lots of the fingering, but that's okay too. You just want to be thinking like, what would Shearer do in this situation? What would Paul Henry do in this situation? Another good option would be the Royal Conservatory books, and they just came out with the new 2018 edition, by the way. And this is great because it's by level, right? And they heavily finger it, and I don't actually always like their fingering all that much. They're really into utilizing the best possible fingering, which at beginner stages, I sometimes like to stick with concepts. So like learning to deal with awkward string crossings by using just IM. But they include lots of great fingerings, like the perfect fingering for a passage by including the A finger a lot in there and stuff like that. That's incredibly useful because you can compare the fingerings in this book to the fingerings in another book, especially if it's like a piece by Fernando Sor. You can compare what one person did to what another person did, and it'll allow you to engage with that. My recommendation though is make sure you go to a low-level book. Don't try to get a book at your playing level. Go quite a few grade levels below where you think you're at, so that you can play an easy piece and really concentrate on the right-hand fingerings and get into why they might have chosen those fingerings. So that's a really good option, is the Royal Conservatory books. But method books are really great too. And that's what teachers do all the time, is that they're teaching from these, they're teaching students so below their level, so they're going over a lot of music and making choices and decisions on that easier music by thinking about all the things we talked about in the last 3 videos. Another great thing to do is to go through entire opuses Giuliani's 120 right-hand exercises are really great. I really like this edition by David Grimes. He even writes in sometimes Giuliani's fingerings and then a modern fingering. And that's a really great comparison because you can see the benefits of two different fingerings, one historical, one modern, and decide which one you think is better, or at least just see what the benefit of each different fingering is. Going through an entire opus of Soar, for example, is also great because you'll have many challenges, many different challenges, and you kind of like build up your foundation and slowly build up confidence. Just make sure that the opus is easy enough for you to accomplish. If you're more on the beginner side, beginner or early intermediate side, get pumping nylon right away. It has a lot of great exercises in it. It's probably a really great place to start, along with beginner methods, as I said, because beginner methods are like you're learning your pieces and you're learning how to play. So they'll talk about right hand fingering a lot. But pumping nylon's great. It has some real essential exercises in it that are very useful. Another really great one, if you've gone over some of these books before and you're still thinking like, oh, I just want more and more and more, get the Bible of Classical Guitar Technique. This book, despite the title, it's a translation from the German edition. This book, and there's a link to this under the video, but this book has like 200 and something pages, 240 pages of exercises. And so like every conceivable right hand open string arpeggio is in this book. He really goes through like every conceivable right hand fingering that you could possibly want. So I'd highly recommend this. If you're a student and you've gone over a few method books and you've gone over pumping nylon and you've done some playing and you're feeling like you're getting confident, but you just need a little bit more and you need a little bit more materials. This book, you will not get through it. It's so much material that you can literally have tons of examples of right hand fingering passages, which will really teach you some great things. And I really trust this book, and I think that the fingerings are great and all the exercises are wonderful. I don't use it in my studio a lot because it's just too massive. It's like there's too much that it can be too much for students. But if you're really interested in upping your right hand technique and your right hand fingering, you could just do a few exercises every day from this book and really learn what some of the possibilities are, because the possibilities are endless. It's just such a massive book. So I'd highly recommend that. And then my final words on the topic are this, is that when like academics do a master's degree or a PhD, they have to go through a defense, right? So they do something like a thesis or they argue a point, and then a panel of professors will grill them on that and say like, why did you choose this? And they'll bring up alternatives and you have to justify yourself. So, and I think that's really an important concept, is the idea of justifying what fingering you choose. If you choose a fingering just based on your own personal preferences, or you just say like, I just did it that way and I practiced it that way the first time and just kept doing it, that's not justifying your choice of fingering. So you want to make sure that you justify the choice. And we've talked about that a little bit. We've talked about times when you might choose rest stroke over free stroke, or times when you have an arpeggio texture and you don't want to do rest stroke in the fingers because it'll mute the sound out on one of the strings, which will cause like a lack of sustain in the arpeggio. And that's a justification for using free stroke, right? So you choose free stroke and then you justify it. Same thing if you have a passage and you don't want to include A because it gets too complex or something like that, and you think that just alternating fingers will be the most efficient, despite the awkward string crossings. If you're able to discuss it like that and talk about why you're choosing it, and it works, then you've got a good argument on your hands for choosing that fingering. Also, if you've gone through a lot of these different books, you can also bring up like a little bit extra evidence on top of that. You can say like, I chose this fingering because of this, this, and this, and also because like Scott Tennant recommends it, or the RCM uses it regularly in this piece, and this piece. And you become so confident because you have information that you can back it up with, but you also have examples of professional guitarists giving that same advice. And because there's no easy answers to this, I can't just tell you exactly how to finger everything, because there's a million variations that we would have to talk about. But again, justifying your choice is key to this whole argument, so you are able to say why you're using a certain fingering. And then you can back it up with examples. So maybe the best thing you can do right now is make sure you have at least a couple of technique books that you're practicing out of, so that you're getting good habits under your fingers. You have some easy material, some method books, maybe 1 or 2 method books, and some easy, like maybe some RCM books that are below your level that you're using to practice good fingerings that are written out for you. So that's really great. And then you can have some pieces that aren't fingered, that you're making your own choices on, that you can really dive into, and you can tell yourself, I'm going to write in the fingerings and I'm going to justify it by being able to explain why I wrote those fingers in. And then hopefully you'll be on the right path. But just remember that taking lessons from a good teacher is probably is a real key factor here, because they will inform you when you've overlooked something or you've missed some idea that is important.